Aloha, everybody. Let's
Hi.
welcome Tourian, who is visiting from Bucharest, of all places.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have. I'm on a little vacation, so a short 3-week vacation, and I'm actually supposed to fly back next week. Yeah,
Visiting family.
Yeah, I'm visiting my mom and my extended relatives. So it's been
Awesome.
fun and jet lag.
Jet lag, yeah. Well, we haven't traveled in 2 years.
Yeah, I actually last time it was 2018. So.
Oh wow.
Lots of things have changed.
Well, I'm sure. Oh, crazy. Let's say hello to a few people. First one in the room was Patrice. Hello, lovely Patrice. And we have
Hi.
Nancy from Intuition, Deanne, Blue Crescent Tarot, Tony, Intuitive Tarot and Jewelry, and Selkie. Let's see, I think that's everybody that's here so far. Welcome everybody, and welcome everyone who's coming later. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Tarot of the Abyss and the Oracle of Echoes. So, and I see we have a question already. Will there be a spoiler alert for Tarot of Echoes, do you think?
Oh, well, I unfortunately I don't have any spoilers for Tarot of Echoes. It still works, and I haven't been able to work on it since I've, actually probably about a week before I left, because I was in the midst of packing, and while I'm here, I haven't brought anything with me except my decks. So I do have decks, but I can't paint here or do anything like that, because then I'd have to ship everything back or stick them in the suitcases and stuff. And so, but I can say that I have 2 more cards to finish for the Suit of Cups. So right now the Major is done, the Suit of Swords is done, and the Cups are almost done. And the deck has gone in a little bit of a different direction, which I will be, it happens when you start, illustrating things, and especially when you're illustrating, it takes a while. And so I've decided to actually change it. So I guess there is kind of a spoiler. I will be changing some of the major cards, because when I started the deck, I had something different in mind. And then as I started drawing out the suits, I decided that I want to incorporate other things in terms of technique. So I will be going back and kind of adding different layers to it, which hopefully will make it look better.
Hopefully. I'm sure it'll be amazing. I mean, and how closely is it going to match the Oracle of Echoes?
It is, in terms of concept wise. I do want to keep it like not as I don't want to say rigid, but in terms of ideas, I want to make it a little bit more open. And I will have, there's a lot of color, so there's definitely, it's not going to be, obviously, for people who know what it looks like. There's going to be some color introduced, which is going to match that. However, what I've noticed, so when you do an oracle deck, you're very, they're pretty much, there are no rules, there really are no rules in terms of oracle decks, which is why sometimes when people will come to me and say, I would like to create a deck, I tend to be more of I advise to create an oracle deck for the first time, because you're not bound by any type of meanings, and you can create your own meanings and own cards. So it's a little better. In terms of tarot, you are confined by the meanings of each card. So in terms of the freedom, you have freedom in illustrating the pictures in a different way, but the concept still has to stay the same for each card. So there is you can never make it identical to an oracle deck, because if you then you get a lot of folks saying it doesn't look like a tarot deck. You know, there's no why, you know, it doesn't look like a tarot deck. It looks more like an oracle deck. So I do want to keep it in colorful and somewhat painterly. It's not going to be as, it's not as precise as, say, the you know, Tarot of the Abyss. That one's very fine detail and all that. So it won't have the same amount of detail in that, but there's going to be a different layer, a little bit more so than the oracle deck. So right now, what is on the Oracle of Echoes, I do have a website that people can see some of the cards that have been created, and you'll see that when the majors were created, they looked more kind of abstracty. And as I progressed, I was like, you know what, I do want to tie it in a little bit. I want to make it a little bit more blended, to make it more of a tarot, because it's not an oracle deck. It's supposed to be a companion to it, but it's not an oracle, visually speaking. So so yeah, hopefully people will like it.
So it'll complement the deck versus matching the deck.
I think so. Right now I've read with so obviously I'm biased. It's very hard to be objective when you've created the images. But I have worked with the Oracle of Echoes and the Bonestone together. So they actually worked for me. They worked very well together, even though the Bonestone was created for somebody else. But the image, you know what I mean? Like, stylistically speaking, they're not the same. So
yeah, I've used Oracle of Echoes with the Bonestone as well as the Tarot of the Abyss. And I love both of them. They're both amazing reads, or amazing combos.
Thank you. This took forever. It is it's the name itself, the Abyss. It literally took forever to make.
Yeah, well, I do appreciate though that how you made the art. I mean, this hanged one is amazing, where you're actually seeing it from the perspective of the hanged person. So, I mean, I love the Abyss. It's an amazing deck, and I love that you put together. Let me see. I shuffled, so of course now I'm gonna have to dig. But here's an example: how you have two versions of the Three of Swords. Right?
Yeah,
Swords.
This deck does have two versions of the 3 and the 10 of Swords. And actually, I have to credit, because during the creation process, I'm friends with Kelly from the Truth and Story, and she has a different perspective in terms of reading the tarot, and through discussions and just talking about decks and all that. We came to discuss about how people view 3 and the 10 of Swords, and I read on a traditional Rider-Waite system. I don't read the way that she does specifically, but I was like, what, why can't we just have both? I was like, why can't we just have both?
Let's do it.
We could have two ways of reading it and see what happens. Right. So that's how that happened, because it was more from the idea that not everybody reads with that meaning in the cards. People have problems in terms of the Suit of Swords specifically, because it deals with the mind. And since the Suit of Cups has, a number of cards that denote loss and some, emotional issues, then her idea was, you don't really need to have that repeated within the Suit of Swords. Right. Even though because you have emotional anguish already shown and loss. So I was like, well, let's see what's the explanation, and we talked about it, and so that's how kind of the idea came about. I'm like, I can do that. I can do two versions for it.
2 versions, yeah. So now the deck's 80 cards. I actually keep both versions of both cards shuffled into the deck, just because the meanings are so different.
They are, right? Yeah, they do.
I feel like it adds to the deck to have both of them in, because, especially if, like, both versions come out during a reading, then it's like there's something going on there.
Yeah, it could. I actually, so I have my deck here too, and I did a reading for one of my friends the other day, and I kept them both in too, and both versions came up in the spread, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is interesting. I've never done a reading with having both of them show up at the same time, so it was a different form of interpretation. So then that begs the question: does that mean that we're modifying the Rider-Waite? By
Right.
Am I doing that? Am I modifying it, or am I not modifying it? So I don't have an answer for that yet. I don't think that was not my intention, because I know there's a lot of traditionalists when it comes to this. So it was more of a.
The great thing about having two versions is that the traditionalists can keep the one they're used to.
Right.
And those of us who like to explore can have both in it. Or, as Orsi says, maybe you're expanding the Rider-Waite system.
That would be nice. Yeah. I mean, it is. Nobody said not to do it, as long as you don't break something that's been tried and true. You can still build on it, as long as you don't just start removing all the traditional cards, like, I don't need the 10, I don't need the 3. Let's not. So I don't want to do that. I don't know if I will be incorporating it in the Tarot of Echoes. I don't want to say yes or no, because it really depends on how I feel about it when I'm creating it. Like, if I tell myself you have to do this, you have to incorporate it, it won't work out. It's forcing it. So I'll just.
You got to let it happen organically, right?
Right.
Let it unfold as it will. So the thing I really love about the Oracle of Echoes, though, is that you crowdsourced for cards, which is amazing. And I know that you did a card in here for Kelly's son. So.
Yeah. You actually, so you have the second edition.
Second edition.
I have the first edition with me. I don't have the second edition with me, but it's in both those. It's in both editions. So the one you have has more cards than the one I have. I added 10.
You said you added 10, right?
Yeah, there's 10 additional ones, and it was created with the help of the community, because at the time, like, I was reading Oracle. I used to work a lot with soul cards. That was like my primary to go Oracle deck. And then I did buy a bunch of, I have a lot of decks, but I did buy a lot of Oracle decks. And it just seemed that a lot of the Oracle decks had just very soft approaches at the time. So this was 2000, I think it was 2016 when the first edition came out, when I was working on it. And I was like, well, what about having more, like expand it, have something that's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have to be give you a very positive feeling. It just, as long as it's giving you a truthful reading, you can deal with it. So I didn't really know what cards to incorporate, because there's just so many, ways to do it. So I just put out a call on Instagram and have people just say, what do you think is missing? What would you like to see? And a lot of people did, and majority of the cards were, done with that in mind. Like, I know balance, imperfect beauty was create space, depression. There was also spirit guides. There's just a lot of information coming from the community, and it was very helpful, because it just put me on a different path than what normally would have happened if nobody chimed in.
Right.
I would hate to think like what would have happened and nobody answered the call, right?
So it went from 50 to 60 cards. What are the 10 cards you added?
So I don't have it with me. So off the top, I know I have harmony, inner child. I think one is called like boundaries. There's also listen. There's drawing blank now on my own cards.
Yeah. First one you made 60 of them.
Silver linings. So yeah, so just I was trying to add a layer of it, for instance, like silver linings, because it just to see beyond the things that are going on in your life, to try and find the positive aspects in it. So just boundaries was also, in a way, there is a card that is called, I believe, Let Go, but that's from the first edition. Letting go is different than boundaries. Letting go is boundaries is knowing your boundaries, knowing where to put a limit for yourself, versus letting go when you have to leave, emotionally leave something behind, so that they can have a different meaning depending on how you pair them. And also, if you're reading with tarot, it can give different nuances to the meaning itself.
So we have a question here. Tony wants to know, is there an expansion pack that we can get for those people who have the first edition and want to add the 10 cards?
So it's not, you mean like buying them separately, I guess would be the question. If you can purchase the 10
pack kind of thing. Yeah.
No, because the way it's printed, it's coming from the printer. It's printed in a box, and the box is tailored to the 10 additional cards. So the box itself was modified. It is a separate edition because there's been additional changes from the first one. The back is different, and also the bottom border. So I have the old version here. So you have the new version. I have the old version. So I'll show you I'll show you one that you can actually see the border. So this is one of the cards that has, so it has a black bottom border, and the font itself is different. So if you hold up one of your versions, you can see that the font is different, and also there is no bottom border. Also,
that card handy to see.
Well, whichever one you have, or like the lovely.
Here it is. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so there is a bottom border, and the font is different. It's more cursive. I guess more brushwork, and then the image itself is a little bigger since the border was removed, and the backs are different. So if you were to, the size of the card is different, but I can't really then what's the point of coming up with a second edition? You know what I mean? Like, then any second edition, usually you'll have cards from an old edition. And like the Marielle, right? The Marielle first edition, she had some different cards, but the borders were, I think she had borders also that were removed. I believe the font was different, and then there was the cards are the same, but she introduced a couple of cards. I think the Hierophant was removed and something else was introduced, the Hierophant image. So you can't really, then there would be no,
it wouldn't match
logic.
Up.
It wouldn't match up. I could have, but even then it would have been a second edition. Like if I were to just add the cards and then keep the border and the font, that's still an addition. So the deck itself, the box itself would have been changed in size. because this houses 50 cards versus what you have, which houses 60. So the thickness of it is, it's much, yours is much wider than this.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's pros and cons. I mean, if it's just like one card, then I can see how, all right, you can get the one
10
card,
cards.
but 10 is just, it's a little, then I'd have other creators on my back going, why'd you do that? Because then you set a precedence also. It's almost like in any business, right? If you want to be you want to make it accessible, but you're also creating a precedence for other creators, so then somebody else who's going to want to create a second edition, you'll have people, well, she did this, why can't you do this? So it'll create some some conflict in that sense. But yeah,
so for those looking to order the second edition, I got the question here, when is the next printing, and when will there be pre-orders for the new Oracle of Echoes?
So I do pre-orders about twice a year. Sometimes it'll be 3, depending on the demand. So I don't order 1,000 decks. I don't do that. I order according to demand. If I see a number of people that are emailing me, asking me, then I'm like, okay, I guess people still want it. So I'll do pre-orders. Usually, like, I left now, so I did a round of pre-orders for this new edition. I believe in May. I put it out in May.
Yeah, it was May.
May and June. So I kept it open for 2 months. Usually I only keep it open for 1 month. I kept it for 2 months because it was a second edition. Normally I will only do 1 month, because that's assuming that people already have had the edition. They've already seen decks, out there. They've seen it. They know if they want to get it or not. With a second edition, when people don't know, I'll keep it open a little longer, because they're still deciding, like, should I get it? Should I not get it? Maybe I'll get it, so I'll leave a little bit more time. But I left for Romania, and I couldn't extend it. I ordered them right after the cutoff day. So the cutoff was July 30th, June
30th.
June 30th. And then on the 31st, I already had my order in at the printer. So I don't wait. I will order them, and then when I get them in, then I start shipping them out. This time I'll do another round of pre-orders. So we're in August. I don't do anything while I'm out of the country, because I don't know what I want to make sure that I'm in the country and I have access to everything that I need. So probably late fall. I'm thinking either like, let's see. So I did it in May. So May, June, July, August, September, October, probably. So maybe in October, I can open up a pre-order then, and that would mean that it would be a month of pre-order, and then after that, so you'd probably be receiving them, December and into January, because I'm a one person. So if there's over 300 packages, then I'm the one shipping them. So I'm like one. Yeah. And then I do the same for every deck.
Yeah. So and I know that I had just missed that pre-order, and you said that you were going to have like a handful on your website.
I had like,
I was lucky enough.
I actually thought I'd have more. I thought I would have more, because the reason I don't know is, like, I can have 25 decks left over, let's say, but until I know that everything is out, then if there's a mistake or something, then I can, I have time to ship the person another one, like I'll. But the issue is still with international orders, because I've had decks take 3 months.
Oh,
to get to
wow.
somebody, and they think the
Yeah.
deck is lost, and sometimes they'll come back to me after
Hmm.
3 months. I have the deck at my house. I'm like, what? So it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, especially being a one-woman show without
Yeah,
anybody else here.
yeah, I have to, and I was worried because I knew I'd have to leave um, in August. So I was trying to have everything shipped and out the door by then. And so it wouldn't make any sense for me to, that's why I closed everything. I still have to set up pre-orders also for Clair de Lune, for the
Mhm.
Lenormand, and for that one has been out for a while. I mean, I've sold out for a while, and I didn't want to
Right.
have anything before I got back.
I'll have to order that one. I just took Kelly's Lenormand class, so I'm
Oh, yay!
absorbing as much as I can. Yeah.
I love
And
Lenormand.
I don't know if he's here, but Chris of Elemental Cartomancy did unboxing for the Clair de Lune. And it's a gorgeous deck. Yeah.
It's it's in general, Lenormand I think is very it seems hard, but it's actually easy in a way. It's easier in a way than tarot. It's just 36 cards, so it's easier to pair up.
Mhm.
But surprisingly
Well,
not very many people know about it. Like I've had people not even hear about Lenormand. Like, what is
really.
that? So
Huh. For me, it was just I had been a tarot reader for so long, it was hard to disengage that part of my brain to read a different way. It was almost like learning a whole new language, is the way I described Lenormand. And now
it
that I
is, yeah.
understand the language, I love reading with it. But yeah, it took me taking a class with Kelly to really understand it because, like I said, it's like every time I tried to read with Lenormand, my uh, tarot brain would kick in and try and like interpret the cards, and I'm like, no, 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 that's not how it works. I got to figure out how it works, and it took someone else showing me to really understand it. And I get it. Some people really need that outside influence in order to learn something.
You see the
For me,
tower and you think tower.
right, exactly. Or you see the moon, you think illusions.
Right.
Right. The sun's the same.
Sun is the same, yeah. Sun is happy everywhere.
Right, which makes sense. Um, but yeah, it was just interesting that I had to reach out to someone in order to learn that system. It was a whole new language for me. Of course, now I'm tempted to take all her classes.
She's good. She's good.
Yeah, and actually, quite a few people here are in the class with us. Our last class is this coming Saturday, and she's going to teach us the game of hope.
Oh, nice. Say hi to her for me.
Oh, I will, of course. Um, as far as the tarot, but you said it took you a long time to get it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it was
Um,
crazy long. I mean, in my mind, it took forever.
mhm,
So I started it in 2000. So I started it after I did the Oracle of Echoes. I started before the
mhm.
Bonestone. So it was, gosh, I don't know,
Oh wow.
16 or 2015 or 16. So
Mhm,
I wasn't going to create a tarot deck. I did I missed drawing in pen and ink.
mhm,
I used to do that a lot in school, and
mhm,
I just wanted to come back to it. And after doing the Oracle of Echoes, it was which is totally the opposite, artistically speaking, from the Abyss, Tarot of the Abyss, right?
mhm.
You go from this, you can do whatever you want, throw caution
Swirls of
to
color.
the wind, swirls of color. So, and then I was trying to ground myself, and I drew the Fool, and I drew,
Mhm,
I started drawing the Fool, and and then I drew another card, and then by the time I got to the Emperor, or within a couple cards within, I was like, I think I'm drawing a tarot deck. So I started drawing it, and I was honestly, I can't remember how far I was in. I think I was within the suit of swords, because I usually will go after the major arcana. I start drawing out the swords. Just that's just what I do. And then I put it on hold, so to illustrate the Bonestone. Yeah, that one, because I just couldn't mentally wrap my brain around two concepts that were so different, especially because, you know, the Bonestone was coming from Avalon's perspective and her ideas about each card and what she wanted to illustrate in it, versus the Abyss, where I was the one coming up with the image, you know, the ideas and how I wanted to approach it. So I couldn't really work on two, for instance, two Four of Cups cards at the same time, even say if they were staggered, because the style was different. Even though the Bonestone does have pen and ink in it with color, incorporated with color, it still didn't have the amount of, it was more free than the Abyss in terms of like, because it had the color aspect, so you could be more explosive with the color, and so yeah. So and conceptually, you know, this was more of an earthy based deck, and very witchy in nature, and kind of, you know, from her experience as a Brazilian witch, right? Because she's from Brazil, versus me, who I am, you know, I'm Romanian with my own.
There she is.
There she is, with my own artistic ideas in terms of how things would go. So I didn't want to combine them, because in a way you could stump without actually intending to. You can start plagiarizing yourself. Like you will start drawing something, and then all of a sudden you realize that you already did it for that person. So you're like, oh, okay. But you don't, you know, you can't even. So if you're working on two things at the same time, it doesn't really kind of mesh up very well.
Right. But I gotta say, the Oracle of Echoes and Bonestone definitely read really well together.
They do. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Yeah, I've used them both together. I've also used the Oracle of Echoes with Druidcraft, and I've used it with Anna Kay. And so even though they're different, so but they worked. And I have used it with the Tarot of the Abyss too, so I'm okay with it. But I still go to the soul cards sometimes. Like, oh, that's like, yeah. If I'm drawing a blank, they're very there's no you know, there's no name on the card, so you're left. It's just like going down a hill on a bike with your like, wee. Just like pick your whatever.
Well, I will say one thing. Usually when I pick up an oracle, I have to also pick up the book just to like, so I understand where the creator's coming from, that kind of stuff. With Oracle of Echoes, I know that there's the PDF book, but I barely even looked at it, because it's just, I don't know, for some reason this deck has such a strong voice for me that it's like, I didn't need anybody else interpreting it. It was just so clear and loud that it was, yeah, this is an amazing oracle, I gotta say.
Thank you.
I didn't need any interpretation.
The book is there. There's a second edition to the Oracle of Echoes. So the guidebook for the second edition does have the new cards and the new explanations. So there are two separate PDFs.
I did download it. I don't know. I just never opened it.
I don't think you need to, but I know people want guidebooks, so I did make a guidebook for it. I did make a book for the Tarot of the Abyss too, which was, that one kind of needed the explanation, I felt. So yeah, but writing is not my forte. I mean, I can write, but it's not my I'm not a writer.
You'd rather make art.
Yeah.
So as far as the Tarot of the Abyss, what was your favorite card, and which one was the hardest for you to make?
Let me see. I have to go. I'm gonna have to pull it out so I can kind of look at the cards there for a second. Let's see. Well, I can give you a couple of my favorites. Because I don't have it's very hard to say I have one favorite.
Right.
Probably like the hardest. The hardest one. There's two that I would say that are the hardest ones. So okay, so my probably in my top 5 would be the Death card.
Yeah.
And then the 3 of Swords.
I love that 3 of Swords.
The Ace of Cups. The Devil. And the Hanging one. This one it's weird. I was like, that one just popped in my head, and I was like, oh, I have it. I have to go home and draw it out. I just can't, like when you don't want to lose an idea. So that one just boom, it was in my mind. In terms of the hardest ones, I would say that the Queen of Cups was probably one of the hardest ones. And the Hermit. Not conceptually, it took a lot of the time to draw. The Queen of Cups, I had to I had to do poses, shoot myself from different angles so I can get the idea of how to, something a book would let the concept of something in perspective, because sometimes you don't know how to draw it unless you see it. So right. The Hermit was, I was trying to show light coming from below, because the Hermit usually keeps the lamp in his hand, right? And the light is coming from that point. It's trying to get the light to come from a different source. And when you're doing it, and probably the Tower was also challenging to draw, because it had the lightning, which is on the book. Sorry. The little image on the book.
Oh, the little book. Yes, that was actually one of my favorite towers, I gotta say.
Yeah, but drawing the the lightning bolt in the dark. So there are some cards that were a little more challenging. I had to look at a lot of lightning bolts and understand light and dark.
I just love how it's perched on a tree, and the tree is perched on a cliff.
Yeah, he's holding on.
Barely holding on, and
one is holding, one dropped out, one dropped off.
The other one looks like he's about to drop.
Yeah, I had my mom is in one of the cards, and I brought the deck here with me, and I was I showed her the cards, and she's like, I didn't oh, that's nice. Did you see yourself? I'm like, no. Where am I? I'm like, oh, okay, good, great. I'm that good. You can't even recognize yourself. Yeah. So,
oh my God. So yeah. Essence 818 here says, was the 8 of Cups in Tarot inspired by Waiting to Exhale? I call that card the Angela Bassett card.
I've never seen the movie. No, it's not. It's actually inspired. The look of the female she looks like my cousin. My cousin has she looks, she lives in Spain, but she's more, I look very different than the rest of my family. She's actually a brunette, and she looks very Italian or Spanish, so I used a lot of my family, old photos, my grandma, and just, you don't use the exact face, because you never can really capture exactly. But it's actually my cousin. I have to see the movie now that she mentioned it, because I don't know where that is.
Waiting to Exhale.
Is it a new movie or is it an old one?
It's a movie from When did that come out? Wasn't it late 90s, I want to say?
Oh, so it hasn't come out like now, because
I can't remember when it came out, but if anyone in the chat can let us know, that'd be great.
I did want to give her like this kind of like, you don't care and you're like
dashing a drink on the floor.
Right. Yeah. Pretty much, right.
And then Gerald asks what advice you have for me as I work on my deck.
You have a deck coming out?
Well, I've been playing around with the idea of making my own oracle because I'm a painter as well. So Gerald's been kind of pushing me to actually start doing it. So he's like, what advice
do I have? So I think if it's an oracle deck, I think that, if you ask the public like what they would want to see in a deck, that's a good way to, if you're we have a tendency to, like, I do this too before I start working on a deck. Like, you don't want to put pen to paper because you're trying to organize your thoughts, right? So you're like, oh, I will do it. I'll do it. I just have to find the right idea or the right direction to go in it. The problem is there's never going to be a right time or a right direction, because there's always, you're going to change, like every couple of months, your reading style will change, or you'll have a different thing that'll influence you, or so I say just start drawing. I mean, honestly, just start drawing and go by emotion. In terms of oracle, you go by emotion. So thinking of raw things, like how would you, if you wanted to do a card on anger, for instance, right? I'm just throwing this out there. What does anger mean to you, and how do you feel when you're angry? So try and show that instead of showing what somebody else's interpretation of it would be, because you can't feel a raw emotion unless you go through it. So starting with things that I guess would be the way to go in an oracle deck, and then complement it with what other people would like to see incorporated. But just do it. Don't wait for it, because it's not gonna, even if you do one image a month or one image every couple of weeks.
I'm looking, I thought I had a picture on here of at least a couple of the paintings I've already done. But where is it? Okay, it's taking too long to find. Oh, here's one.
I have to adjust my camera angle.
There we go.
Oh, that's pretty cool. What kind of, are you doing acrylic or?
It's acrylic.
It is acrylic. So you're kind of in the you're in my camp, like more like Soul Cards, Oracle of Echoes, kind of that camp where you're expressive with color, and you're not trying to hold it in.
Right.
Which is easier. It's harder in the sense. Yeah. So there you have two cards right there.
Right.
That's pretty good. You have a very good.
That's actually what sparked me. Is a few people saw a couple of my paintings. They're like, "Oh, those look like oracle cards," and I went, "Oh."
Well, they could. If you like, you could call it the moon, or what was the first? Show me the first one again.
That one I called. Wait, where'd it go? There it is. So it's trying to get the glare off. There we go. So it's 3 candles, but it also creates a skull.
So that you could. I see that. Yeah. You have a lot of options for that one.
And it's very textured. I don't know if you can really see it, but you can see like rings and the candles. You can see the drip.
I can see the candle. I can see the colors. I can't see the texture.
No. No, but in person you can. But I don't know how well texture translates into a card anyway.
I think you should also stick to one format. And I guess my advice would be if you're going to do illustration, you always have to keep in mind to create them with extra space around. Because then when you scan them or you photograph them and you place them in the card, what happens is you will end up having to fake your way and make border, like add additional art in Photoshop, and that's actually harder. So try and contain your image within like whatever you did there, but make sure that
there's enough room.
If you're planning to do an oracle, have like depending on how big the actual painting is, just keep some space in to the sides to make sure that you have enough space to go in and have the type at the bottom and all that. If you're gonna have type, if you don't,
well, I also do calligraphy, so I might do that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that happens is when you start, in general, when we start showing people our work, you get critiqued, which is
right,
normal in art in general. Any type of art, painting, sculpting, you will get critiqued, and you're going to have some people say that's great, and you're going to have some people say I don't like it, and that's normal too. Right. And the issue is, are you going to let the people that say I don't like it stop you from finishing to create it? Because that's a lot of people, what people that do create, because we're humans, right? And we get, feelings, and you get sad, or, oh my gosh, they don't like it. What am I going to do? I shouldn't do it. So you stop creating. And I've seen a lot of images like on Facebook, people that start creating decks and then they stop because they don't get the appropriate response. Like sometimes you don't get enough likes, or you don't get enough comments, but that's a feedback loop that we're expecting, right? Am I going to get people who are going to say great job or not? And if that's why you're doing it, if that's the only thing that's going to keep you, then you should stay away from social media as you're creating it, or don't show anything to anybody. And then when you're done, then show it, because a lot of artists will get discouraged, and it's a shame, because we've always been critiqued in some form or other. Before the internet, in school, you'd have your work in a gallery, and maybe you'd have 100 people stop by and see your work, and you'd read something about it. Maybe if you're lucky, any attention was good attention. If you were lucky enough to somebody mention your name as an artist. Nowadays, now you can't stop it. Now it's just like you either get a lot of good feedback or negative feedback. So in a way, it's actually a little bit detrimental to artists, because we can get influenced or discouraged, and
for me it'd be discouragement, because I think it's that, like, isn't it good enough? Isn't it good enough? And the that's not so good would probably knock me down a peg or two. But as far as seeking approval, I don't know, or seeking advice on what I'm creating, I don't think I would be as into that. It's more look at this thing I made. Oh, you don't like it? Maybe I shouldn't make it.
Yeah. And at the beginning, as you're creating it, right, it's almost like a plant, right? You have to give it water, and the water that you're giving it is you, the artist, continually working at it. If you stop giving it water, if you stop creating, then it will die regardless. It won't come to be, there will be no creation, there will be no deck. So I think my advice is to just do it and let the chips fall where they may. Some people will like it, some people won't. You might get some people who want to buy it. Some people will buy it and email you and say, I hate it. I've had that happen. I've had people email me and say, I don't think that my money was well spent. I'm like, should feel that way. I mean, it's their right to feel that way because they did something, but it's also, you have to do it if that's your intention, you know, and in a way, there should be variation in the world. And I think that the reason why there isn't a lot of variation is because a lot of people will get discouraged in the process and stop doing it because there's not enough, I guess, people, you know, commenting or asking. And when you're a beginner, there's never going to be, you know, there's never going to be a lot of people because people don't know you.
Well, I also find it involves a lot of inner strength, right? You're creating the art because it's something that needs to come out of you versus, you know, making art because you're trying to please others. So for me, whenever I make art, unless it's like a commission piece, it's something that's just boiling out of me. I just need to get it out and create it. And half the time I'm making art, it's like I step back and like, wow, I just made that? How did that happen? So.
But if somebody were to tell you, like if you would start showing them the painting as you're creating it, and they would say, oh, I don't really like that area, that would influence you. That will make, you know, that's burst of your, oh, I came up with that, would no longer necessarily be there. I've had that happen. It's not, it's just, it is what it is. But I think there's always been, you know, critics and in art in general, but tarot in a way is a little different because you're creating it as a spiritual tool. You know, the portrait that I will create of my daughter, for instance, that would have really upset me if somebody said, you know, like, oh my God, that's a horrible painting, you know, then that would be like, you know, like, oh, I just did something. So that would be personal to me, to my family. But when I create something that is, I'm not making a deck just for me to keep it in my drawer, you know, and not show anybody or sell it. I'm making it with the intention to offer it to other people. So then you are subjected to different expectations, I guess, you know, so you're placed in you didn't do this right or but as long as I know that it's helping some people, I'm okay with that because I know some people will get something out of it. And if some people won't, others won't, then there's so many decks out there that will resonate with them, if not mine, because I'm not the only one making decks, which is why the more decks out there, the better.
Right.
In my opinion, I have like over 200 decks at home, so I'm not a good person to ask when it comes to how many decks you have.
Myself, so. Tony wants to know what deck has been your favorite to create so far.
Well, okay, so I'm the one I'm working on is always my favorite. So I know it's not an answer that people want to hear, because when I loved making the Abyss Tarot. I loved making it. But I also loved making the Bonestone because this is a totally different experience for me. Totally different. It was done live on YouTube. So it was just, you know, very different than me sitting at my desk and just coming up with ideas. So I think that each one, it's almost like asking somebody, if you have 3 kids, which one's your favorite?
Favorite, right. Don't ask mama your favorite kid.
Because each one is like, you love each one, but for different reasons. And, you know, like Hidden Waters Tarot was my first deck that I made, which was very out there, like totally different than it was ink blot, like Rorschach images, right? Yeah. And so it was very different. There was nothing, there was no pen and ink, there was no figures. And I loved making that deck. It was so much fun making it. and it was just like to see what comes up. It was really just like a flip of the coin, kind of what would come up when you combine different things. So, and then once that was done, and after a period of, time, I went to a different, I did the Clair de Lune, which was very detailed and a different, and I loved making, so each one kind of grows artistically with you, I guess.
Right.
So, I'm in a different place than I was, years ago. And the next deck that I'm, the Tarot of Echoes is going to be I think it's going to be a merge of 3 kind of in one. Like it'll probably look something like Echoes, Abyss, and Bonestone all come, just like
all mixed together.
Yeah. So it's hard to choose because they're very different in my mind. They're very different for different reasons, right? The Bonestone is somebody else's concept in my execution, so it's different in that way. The Abyss is very, in a way, internalized, because I was trying to invert everything. I was trying to make people connect from the outside into the card, so that's why you see a lot of where you're the person in the card, like the Hangman and the 3 of Cups, where they draw you in to, kind of celebrate with them, and the 10 of Cups, where she's like she's holding you, pulling you in the card. So I wanted to create some form of a connection between the reader and the viewer, especially in the court cards, because the court cards are the hardest to navigate for a lot of people. The majors are always very easy to understand, and the minors are always so hard to understand, and especially the page knight, not when you get a lot of people, when they get to like the page knight, queen, and king, they're like stuck. It's like, okay, what do I do with these right now? So I was trying to kind of, bring an order in that aspect. So for that reason, I like which is different from the other ones. Hope I answered. I know I kind of rambled on with that one.
No, that was great. It actually triggered something I was going to ask you, and slipped my brain. I'm going to see if I can find any more of the. There we go. So I noticed that in some of the court cards, it almost looks like they're on the same scene. But
yes, they are. They are in. So the cups are in. They're seen. They're on a boat. And there's water all around, so it's all about water, the element of, depicts emotions. And then the page is looking at a map. So if you imagine them all within that ship working together to steer the boat, you have the page is looking at the map of the heart. So he's analyzing the map of the heart. And then the knight, the way I saw it was you had these 4 characters on a ship talking to each other. So you'd have the page saying, okay, guys, steer left, or we have to go this way. Then you have the knight kind of, pulling things, getting the sail to go in the direction that it needs to. Then you have the queen. She's actually controlling the waters. She's the one who is kind of making smooth waters or waves. And then you had the king, who's at the helm of it, who's right there and kind of ordering everything, making sure everything is working smoothly. And I did the same for the swords, and the concept was the same. They're on a different background. They have the maze behind. And so in the swords, you have the labyrinth behind. So you have the maze. And
the pentacles, they seem to be passing
the pentacles. Yeah, you have so that's the page, and in the background is the knight with the horse.
Right.
So the page finds the key. He doesn't really know what it's for because he's still a page. So he's young, whether you want to take it like a young individual or mentally speaking, right? So he does have the drive to find it. Then you have the knight. He passes it to the knight, who is steady. He's not galloping on the horse. He's just like, steadily moving forward with the key because he's now has the key from the page. And then moving on to the queen. The queen finds it within the earth. She unlocks this would be the
right. So got the page.
So that's the page.
Followed by the knight, who now has the key around his neck.
The knight. He's taken it from, and the background, all mountains, meaning related to earth. And then he moves forward, presents it to the queen, who finds the treasure. And at this point, she's the one who unlocks it. She's the one who's capable of finding the treasure. Is the treasure. The treasure then is the heart of the king of pentacles. So, also the pentacles is holding within his palm the same mountains that are in the background because he's capable of grounding. And so that was the narrative of
narrative. Yeah. I love that because it's just, you can see the different parts of the story, which I think will help a lot of people who struggle with quirks, right?
Yeah, it's I've struggled with them, especially in the beginning. It was not I would always be like looking for the next deck that would be easier to read, and because I didn't quite really understand the meanings of them initially. So I was like, I'll get another deck. Maybe that one will make me understand it better. And they all did in a way, because each description that the artist had would give me some idea that I didn't really necessarily have previously. So there is something to be said for, working with multiple decks and understanding them and all that.
Right. So other than the Tarot of Echoes, do you have anything else in the works?
Well, yes, kind of, but I'm not at liberty to say right now.
I guess I should rephrase that. Is there anything you can share with us?
Well, not right now. That's pretty much all that I'm working on right now. So when I get back to the States, I'm going to be trying to work back on, getting that in a good place. I know everybody was hoping for it to be done this year, but it's been, 2020 was a very hard year in general, and I had my kids with me at home.
I know all
about
that.
Schooling and all that, and my plans of having this deck finished by the end of this year went out the window because there's just no way I could. I mean, I was more of a teacher than an artist last year. This year was a little bit better, but it was still, they were still remote up until June, and I still had to be in the house, and this connection wasn't working. This connection is working. So it's,
no, I get it.
I'm hoping I keep saying, by my again, it's like things can happen unexpectedly, like we've all seen. And right now, like I said, I've done 2 suits, almost done 2 suits, and one major in the major arcana. So that would leave me, you know, the Pentacles and the suit of Wands. Hopefully, by the end of next year, it should be done. I have not written a guidebook for it yet. And that's another thing, like I'm contemplating whether I will or not, because it's not, if I were to introduce something new, like I did with the Abyss, I would probably have to explain it. And right now I haven't even thought about a guidebook. I don't think about, I mean, I should really, because with the Abyss, I did write down a couple of cards, like at every card, I'd write down something, because I forget, like I will forget sometimes, why did I do this? You know, why did I do this? And like minute things. So I will write things down, just like key points, so that if I do write a book, I'll come back and have something. And in a way I do, because there's a reason why I post on Instagram. When I'll finish the card, I'll usually post something and say something, and that is keeping a backlog of why I've done something, you know, in a way. So using social media in a way has been helpful, because I did have to go back for the Abyss for a couple cards and be like, why did I do that? And I went back and I found him, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, now I know. So.
Right. Essence 818 asks, will Tarot of Echoes be directly from Anna or US Games?
Right now, I don't have anything with US Games in regards to that particular deck. I can't give, you know, I don't want to say either way, but I would like to publish this one by myself. Primarily because the Oracle of Echoes is with me. So it kind of would make sense for them to be together.
Sister decks. Sister decks.
Right. So right now there's no signed contract with any publisher. You know, and they are the same. The idea would be for them to be the same size, you know, the Oracle of Echoes and the Tarot of Echoes. When you're like if you ever wanted to take cards and shuffle them together, then, you know, they would be the same size. The problem would be if I did give it out, then it would have to kind of stay within those size-wise, I guess. And it takes a long time for a deck to come out when you give the rights to a publisher. Can take up to 2 years, even if the deck's done. So, you know, this one is taken so long that I kind of want to see it out there. I want to finish it and just put it out there.
I get that. You know, so, yeah. Then you can move on to the next one.
Right. I don't know. Maybe my next one will probably be another, maybe a Lenormand. I don't know. I kind of miss the Lenormand vibe.
Do it. Another Lenormand. Well, thank you so much for this, Anna. We've gone over the hour now, so I guess I should let you go, although I could chat with you for hours.
My pleasure.
Next week is my usual 4th Tuesday with my friend Betsy Palmer, medium, and we will be doing readings that day. And then in 2 weeks, I am getting Jenny and Jessica, the creators of the Wisdom of the Shadow Oracle, to come on and talk about the deck.
I saw that and I was going to look at that deck. That's such an interesting image. I saw that on For Love of Cards, I think, and I was like, what is that? That looks so cool.
A really good deck. It's an amazing deck. It really is. How many cards? 44 cards, but it's, yeah, so the artist created these, several of them while she was going through her own counseling and stuff. And so it was a way of expressing and what she was going through. And then the author, Jessica, connected with her. I forget how they met. They met at a conference of some kind, and then they started working together. Jessica pulled out some of the art, and I mean, Jenny pulled out some of the art, and Jessica's like, yes, that's exactly what we need. And so a lot of the artwork was made specifically for her to express herself and was never meant to be an oracle. But now it is.
It looks like it's a beautiful deck. I think it's gonna.
It really is.
I have to look at the
readings, and I think I have an unboxing if you want to check it out.
I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah. So, and that's in 2 weeks. I'll be talking to them. So it's pretty amazing. So Tony says, "Be careful, Anna. This group has a habit of getting us to buy beautiful decks."
Yes, well, we support each other.
Exactly. So again, thank you so much, Anna, and thank you everyone in the chat for being here. Until next time, aloha and a hui ho.